It's not going to be hypey. It's not going to be flashy. You're not going to get a dopamine hit. But if you pay attention, I promise you that you can make $100,000 a month in 2025. My story is I went from knocking on over 20,000 doors as a door-to-door salesman selling security alarms to over $115 million in sales in just 6 years. And I only bring that up so you know that I'm speaking from experience and I'm not just telling you something that I've never done before. Now, the first thing we want to do is we have to figure out what kind of business to start. And that's either a product or a service. And you can have a high ticket service or low ticket, or you can have a high ticket product or low ticket product. Now, I am a huge proponent of high ticket services. Why? Because they're easier to start. You don't need capital. You don't need experience. You don't even really have to have any money. If you've seen Shark Tank, a lot of companies that go on there are product-based service businesses. And the issue with that is they usually need a lot of capital to start. They have to sell at very low margins. So a lot of them are going in, they're taking out loans, they're mortgaging their houses, they're putting their entire lives on the line. And then they go to the sharks because they haven't been able to get the business off the ground with the money they had. And then the sharks are obviously able to take advantage of that situation, and their entire life hinges on this business. And you just don't have to do that. You don't have to risk everything to make $1 million, or not even $1 million, $100,000 a month in 2025. The other spectrum is you have the coffee, right? That's a low ticket product business. And then you have the high ticket product businesses. So that could be furniture, beds, cars even, right? But again, you run into the same issue where you need that startup capital. And that's one of the reasons I'm not a huge fan of product-based businesses, is because if you don't have a lot of money to start, it's very risky. It doesn't mean it can't work. It just means it's very risky. Now, if you switch to the opposite spectrum, you have services. So a service, in short, is air, right? You're not giving them anything other than the service. So all you have to do is put in some grit and sweat. Now, what I started with is I was selling low ticket services. I started selling fitness programs, online coaching programs for fitness, because I was in really good shape. And the issue with that is because I didn't have a big social media following and I didn't have a lot of money, when I would post my $47, I call it the rapid muscle system at the time, nobody would really buy it. And even if they did buy it, let's say I got 3 sales, that's $150. What am I going to do with it? I'm going to get some gas. I'm going to get a Subway. It didn't really change my life. Alternatively, when I raised my price to $3,200 for 4 months, and I went after premium buyers, which is usually 3% of the marketplace, but they're out there, I started making a ton of money. In fact, I made 10K my first week, and then I went on to do $1 million in a year. And the reason for this is if you don't have money and you don't have a big social media following, it's still easy to get these clients, because if you reach out to 100 people a day and you only get 10 people to respond, and you can get 3 calls and close 1 person, that's $3,200. And if you could send 20 messages an hour to a stranger, that's only 5 hours of work plus the 3 calls. So in about 8 or 9 hours, you've made $3,200. So I always love sticking with high ticket services because numerically, statistically, it makes more sense. These other businesses carry more risk. There's just no way around it. You cannot start those types of businesses without the product, right? So you have to actually have cash for the product. Or if you do a low ticket business, usually you have to have a lot of traffic, like Mr. Beast or some of these famous influencers where they can post something and they can just get a ton of traffic. But for the average person watching this, you don't have a following, you don't have money, you don't have skills. So we want to start with the highest likelihood of success, which is going to be a high ticket service. Now, once you've done that and you know you want to start a high ticket service, the next thing is to actually take one of your skills that works into it. So for me, I did fitness coaching because I was a Division I athlete. I started working out at 12 years old. I did, 10 years of training. I did running coaches. I worked with NFL coaches, running backs, the Olympic weightlifting coach for the USA team. I worked with some very high level people. So I was very confident in my ability to get in shape, track nutrition, calories, like all that type of stuff. If you're not sure what to stick with, there's 3 categories you can choose. It can be health, which is what I started in, wealth, so making money, which is what this one would be about, or relationships, like helping someone have better marriages or dating or whatever you call it. If that's where we're gonna start, the next thing is, hey Tanner, I don't have skills. Now most of you probably have skills. You wanna look back at things you've done in the past. What would you teach yourself? What do people usually ask you for help on? What are you good at? What interests do you have? And you could probably think of something that you could package together and sell at a high price.